The blood-streaked sunset painted the dusty horizon of Willits, Colorado in 1878, as Liam Valdez squinted at the approaching silhouette of a lone woman on horseback. He adjusted his worn hat, wiped his weathered brow, and wondered if this stranger might be a blessing or another burden for a man already stretched too thin. Liam had been standing on his porch, counting mouths to feed 7 children inside that rickety farmhouse, all depending on him since his wife Sarah had passed during the last winter's merciless grip. The youngest just 3, the oldest barely 15. Too many hungry bellies for a struggling cattle rancher whose herd had been decimated by disease last season. The woman drew closer, her posture straight despite what appeared to be an exhausting journey. Her chestnut hair caught the dying sun's rays, and even from a distance, Liam could sense a determined spirit in the way she handled her mount. "Pa, who's that coming?" asked his eldest son James, stepping out onto the porch. "Don't know, son. Best get the rifle just in case." James disappeared inside, returning moments later with the Winchester. Liam took it but kept it lowered. Times were hard and suspicion ran high, but something about this visitor didn't trigger his usual wariness. The woman reined her horse at the edge of his property. She was younger than he'd first thought, perhaps in her late 20s, with clear green eyes that locked onto his with surprising directness. Her clothes were good quality but travel-worn. "Are you the proprietor of this ranch?" Her voice carried across the yard, steady and cultured, not a local, certainly. "I am Liam Valdez. This is my land and my family." He gestured vaguely toward the house. "What brings you to these parts, madam?" She dismounted with practiced ease, leading her horse forward. "My name is Victoria Morris. I've come from Boston seeking a new beginning." She paused, seeming to consider her next words carefully. "I understand Willits needs a schoolteacher. I've come to apply for the position." Liam felt a flicker of recognition. "The town council's been advertising back east, true enough." Victoria nodded, patting her horse's neck. "I was told at the general store that your property was on the way to town and that you might offer travelers a meal and lodging for the night. I can pay, of course." Before Liam could respond, his youngest daughter Emma burst through the door, followed by 5-year-old Thomas and 8-year-old Catherine. The 3 children lined up beside their father, staring curiously at the stranger. "Are you a princess?" Emma asked, eyes wide with wonder. Victoria's serious expression softened into a genuine smile. "No, dear, just a lady looking for a place to stay tonight." Liam studied her face. There was something haunting in her eyes, a familiar sadness he recognized all too well. Loss, grief, and something else. A hunger not for food but for purpose. "Children, this is Miss Morris. She's come to be Willits' new school teacher." He turned to Victoria. "You're welcome to stay the night. We don't have much, but what we have, we share." As they walked toward the house, Liam added quietly, "Fair warning, Miss Morris. It's chaotic inside. My wife passed last winter and I'm still learning how to manage 7 children on my own." Victoria paused mid-step, her expression shifting as she glanced at the children running ahead. 7. She whispered, more to herself than to him. "Yes, madam, 7 blessings and 7 mouths to feed." His voice carried the weight of his struggle. Something inexplicable passed across Victoria's features, not pity, but a flash of recognition, perhaps even purpose. "Mr. Valdez," she said softly, "I believe I can help with more than just tonight's dishes." Inside the farmhouse, chaos reigned. 10-year-old William and 12-year-old Daniel were arguing over a wooden toy. 13-year-old Margaret was attempting to cook something that filled the house with smoke, while baby Rebecca cried from a makeshift cradle in the corner. Victoria set down her traveling bag and removed her gloves without hesitation. "Children," she called out, her voice firm but kind, cutting through the noise. "My name is Miss Morris. I'll be staying tonight and I would be grateful for your help in preparing supper." To Liam's astonishment, the children quieted. There was something in her tone, not harshness, but clear authority that commanded respect. She moved immediately to the stove, gently taking the spoon from Margaret's hand. "You've made a good start. Let me show you how to keep the beans from burning." She lifted the crying baby with practiced ease, balancing Rebecca on her hip while stirring the pot. Within an hour, Victoria had transformed the chaos into order. The table was set, the meal salvaged, and even the baby had settled into contented coos against her shoulder. As the family sat down to eat, Liam watched Victoria with growing curiosity. She moved with the confidence of someone who had managed households before, yet there was a shadow behind her smile that suggested a story untold. "Have you taught school before, Miss Morris?" he asked as she served stew into the children's bowls. She nodded. "In Boston, yes, for 6 years. And what brings you all the way to Colorado? Surely there are schools needing teachers back east." Victoria's hand stilled momentarily. "Sometimes, Mr. Valdez, one needs to leave behind painful memories to find a new purpose." She looked up, meeting his gaze directly. "I lost my family, my husband and son, to scarlet fever 2 years ago. Boston held too many ghosts." The table fell silent. Even the younger children seemed to sense the weight of her words. Liam nodded slowly. "I understand that feeling well enough, Miss Morris. Please call me Victoria." That night, after the children were finally asleep, Liam found Victoria sitting alone on the porch, staring at the vast canopy of stars that only the western sky could offer. "They're different here," she said without turning. "The stars brighter somehow." "Less smoke from factories," Liam replied, settling into the chair beside her. "Though I reckon it's also that they're the only light for 100 miles in any direction." They sat in companionable silence for a while, the quiet broken only by the occasional distant howl of a coyote. "You're good with them," Liam finally said. "The children," Victoria smiled faintly. "I've always loved children. Teaching was my calling even before." She trailed off, then continued. "After I lost my son, I found comfort in caring for others' children, but eventually even that wasn't enough." "What do you mean?" She turned to face him, moonlight illuminating the determination in her eyes. "I came west not just to escape memories, Mr. Valdez. I came because I have too much love to give and not enough mouths to feed it to." Her voice caught slightly. "My arms feel empty." My house echoed with silence. "I thought perhaps as a teacher I could make a difference here." Liam nodded slowly. He understood emptiness all too well. "They need you, the town's children. We haven't had a proper teacher in nearly 8 months. And your children, what do they need?" The directness of her question caught him off guard. "They need their mother," he answered honestly. "But since that's not possible, they need stability, structure, someone who can do all the things I'm failing at." Victoria leaned forward slightly. "You're not failing, Mr. Valdez. You're surviving. There's a difference." "Liam," he corrected her. "If I'm to call you Victoria, you should use my given name." "Liam, then." She tested the name cautiously. "I have a proposition for you." He raised an eyebrow, waiting. "I need lodging in town. You need help with your children." "What if I stayed here? I could teach at the school during the day and help with your family in the evenings and mornings, in exchange for room and board." Liam stared at her, searching for the catch. That's a generous offer, but surely you'd prefer your own place in town." "This is hardly the accommodations a lady like yourself is accustomed to." Victoria's laugh was unexpected and bright. "I grew up on a farm in Pennsylvania before my father's business took us to Boston. I'm no stranger to hard work and simple living." Her expression grew serious again. "The truth is, Liam, I need this as much as you do. A house full of children would be healing for me." Liam considered her offer, weighing his pride against his children's needs. Finally, practicality won out. "We'll try it. For a month, if it works for both of us, we'll continue the arrangement." The next morning, Liam rode with Victoria into Willits to meet with the town council. The members were immediately impressed with her credentials and demeanor, officially hiring her on the spot. When she explained her living arrangement at the Valdez Ranch, there were a few raised eyebrows, but the practical benefits were clear enough to quiet potential gossip. The school was a simple one-room building that needed cleaning and organizing before classes could begin the following Monday. Victoria threw herself into the work, cataloging the meager supplies and creating a list of needs. "You're going to need more books," Liam observed, helping her arrange the desks. "And slates and chalk and maps," she added, "but we'll make do with what we have to start." Her enthusiasm was infectious, and Liam found himself volunteering to build additional bookshelves and repair the leaking roof before winter. By late afternoon, they had purchased the essential supplies Victoria needed and were heading back to the ranch. As they rode, Liam pointed out landmarks and shared stories of the area's history. Victoria listened attentively, asking questions that revealed a genuine interest in her new home. "It must have been difficult," she said as they approached the ranch, building all this on your own. Not entirely on my own. Sarah and I built it together, starting with just a claim and a dream. His voice softened with memory. She was fearless, my Sarah, never complained even during that first winter when we nearly froze to death in a tent. She sounds remarkable. She was. Liam glanced at Victoria. Your husband, what was he like? Victoria's smile was tinged with sadness. Edward was a professor of literature, brilliant mind, gentle soul. He could recite poetry for hours and make the most mundane subjects fascinating. Our son Henry was just like him, always with a book, always asking questions. She took a steadying breath. They were everything to me. As they approached the ranch, the sound of children's laughter greeted them. James had organized the younger ones in a game of tag, and even Margaret was participating, her usual serious demeanor temporarily abandoned. They seem happier already, Liam observed. Victoria nodded. Children are resilient. They need routine and love to thrive. Over the following weeks, Victoria established both at the ranch and in her classroom. She rose before dawn each day to help prepare breakfast and organize the children for school. The older ones attended classes with her in town, while Liam kept baby Rebecca and 3-year-old Emma at home. In the afternoons, Victoria taught Margaret and the other girls basic household management while helping the boys with their studies. The transformation in the household was remarkable. Meals became organized affairs with actual conversation instead of chaos. Clothing was mended, the house was cleaned regularly, and for the first time since Sarah's death, Liam felt the crushing weight of responsibility lighten slightly. One evening in late September, after the children were asleep, Liam found Victoria mending shirts by lamplight. Her fingers moved deftly, her expression peaceful. Our month is up, he said, settling into a chair across from her. Victoria looked up, needle poised mid-stitch. So it is. The arrangement seems to be working well. She nodded, returning to her sewing. I believe it is. Then you'll stay. He tried to keep his tone casual, but something in him tensed, waiting for her answer. Victoria set down her mending and met his gaze directly. I'd like to, yes. The children are making wonderful progress both at home and in school, and I. She hesitated, then continued softly, I've found purpose here. Relief washed over him. Good, that's good, he cleared his throat. The children have grown attached to you. It would be difficult if you left. Only the children. Her question hung in the air between them, bolder than he expected. Liam studied her face in the lamplight, the intelligence in her green eyes, the determination in the set of her jaw, the gentleness around her mouth. In just a month, she had become essential to his family's well-being. And perhaps to his own. No, he admitted finally, not only the children. A faint blush colored her cheeks, but she held his gaze. I'm glad. Next day, Liam rode into town alone to speak with Pastor Matthews. The older man welcomed him into the small church office with a knowing smile. I've been expecting you, Liam, he said, pouring coffee into 2 chipped mugs. Town's been talking. Liam accepted the coffee with a nod. Figured as much. That's partly why I'm here. Miss Morris is a fine woman, excellent teacher. The children adore her. Yes, Liam agreed. But her living at the ranch, I'm concerned about her reputation. Pastor Matthews leaned back in his chair. Folks understand practical arrangements, especially when children are involved, but I take your point. You're thinking of making the arrangement more permanent. Liam shifted uncomfortably. It's too soon. Sarah's only been gone 9 months, and Victoria, she's still healing from her own loss. Yet you're here asking about it. I'm asking if it would be improper, if I should wait longer. The pastor considered this, stroking his beard thoughtfully. Grief doesn't follow a timetable, Liam, and out here practical matters often outweigh social conventions. The question isn't whether it's been long enough, but whether both of you are ready to build something new from your shared losses. Liam nodded slowly. She brings life back into our home. The children smile again. Even little Rebecca seems happier. And you, are you happier? Yes, Liam admitted. But is that disloyal to Sarah? Pastor Matthews smiled gently. Sarah loved those children fiercely. Do you think she would want them or you to remain in mourning forever? Or would she want you to find happiness again? The question struck Liam deeply. He could almost hear Sarah's voice, practical and loving. Take care of our babies, Liam, whatever that means. Thank you, Pastor, he said, rising to leave. You've given me much to consider. October brought cooler weather and the harvest. The ranch hands Liam had hired for the season worked from dawn to dusk, bringing in the hay and preparing the cattle for winter. Victoria adjusted her teaching schedule to allow the older children to help with the harvest, incorporating practical mathematics and science into their tasks. One crisp Saturday, Victoria was hanging laundry while the younger children played nearby. Margaret was helping by passing clothespins and singing a song she'd learned at school. The domestic piece of the scene warmed Victoria's heart. Suddenly, Emma's scream pierced the air. Victoria whirled to see a rattlesnake coiled near the woodpile where the child had been playing. Without hesitation, Victoria lunged forward, snatching Emma away just as the snake struck, its fangs grazing Victoria's ankle instead of the child's leg. Liam, working nearby, heard the commotion and raced over with his rifle. With one clean shot, he dispatched the snake, then dropped to his knees beside Victoria, who was clutching a terrified Emma. "Are you bit?" he demanded, his voice rough with fear. Victoria shook her head. "Just a graze, I think. The fangs caught my boot more than my skin." She was pale but composed, still comforting Emma. "Check her first. Make sure she wasn't struck." Liam quickly examined his daughter, finding her unharmed. By now, James had arrived with the other children clustering fearfully behind him. "James, take your brothers and sisters inside," Liam instructed. "Margaret, fetch the medical kit from the cabinet." Once the children were gone, Liam gently examined Victoria's ankle. The snake's fangs had indeed barely penetrated through her boot, leaving only small puncture marks with minimal swelling. "We need to clean this properly," he said, his voice steady despite the panic he felt. "Can you walk to the house?" "I think so," Victoria replied, but as she tried to stand, she swayed slightly. Without further discussion, Liam scooped her into his arms and carried her to the house. Victoria, surprised by the gesture, instinctively wrapped her arms around his neck. "This isn't necessary," she protested weakly. "Humor me," he replied, his expression grim as he pushed through the door where the children waited anxiously. For the next few hours, Liam cleaned and treated the wound, following the instructions from the medical book Dr. Thompson had given him after Sarah's death. The bite was minor, and Victoria showed no signs of severe poisoning, but Liam insisted she rest while he and Margaret handled the evening chores. As darkness fell, Liam checked on Victoria again. She was sitting up in bed, reading to Emma and Thomas, who had refused to leave her side. "How are you feeling?" he asked from the doorway. "Much better," she assured him. "It was more frightening than harmful, I think." Liam nodded, relief evident in the relaxation of his shoulders. "Children, time for bed. Miss Victoria needs her rest." After tucking the children into their beds, Liam returned to Victoria's room with a cup of willow bark tea. She accepted it gratefully. "You didn't hesitate," he said quietly, sitting on the edge of her bed. "You put yourself between Emma and that snake without a second thought." Victoria looked down at the steaming cup. "I didn't think, I just acted." "That's what parents do," Liam said simply. The weight of his words hung between them, Victoria's eyes filled with tears. "I miss that, being a mother." Her voice broke slightly. "When Henry died, I felt as though my purpose had been ripped away. Teaching other people's children helped, but it wasn't the same." Liam reached out hesitantly, then took her hand in his. "You've been mothering my children for weeks now. They adore you. Emma told me yesterday that she thanks God every night for sending you to us." A tear slipped down Victoria's cheek. "I love them as if they were my own," she confessed. "Is that wrong? Am I trying to replace what I've lost?" "No," Liam said firmly. "You're healing, we all are." He paused, gathering his courage. "Victoria, I've been thinking about our arrangement." She tensed slightly, preparing herself for him to suggest it was time for her to find her own place in town. Instead, he continued, "It's working well for the children, for all of us. But I worry about your standing in the community. People talk." "Let them talk," she replied with unexpected fire. "I'm doing nothing shameful by helping a family in need." "No, you're not," he agreed, "but there's another solution that would quiet the gossip and—" He hesitated, then finished, "and make permanent what has become very important to me." Victoria's eyes widened as she understood his meaning. "Liam, are you suggesting marriage?" he confirmed. "Not right away, we're both still healing, but eventually if you were willing to consider it." Victoria was silent for so long that Liam began to regret his words. Then she squeezed his hand gently. "I came west seeking purpose," she said softly. "I found 7 children who needed mothering and a man trying valiantly to be both father and mother." She met his gaze steadily. "I would be honored to consider your proposal when we're both ready." Relief and something warmer flooded through Liam. He brought her hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "Thank you." The following weeks brought a comfortable routine. Victoria's ankle healed quickly, and she returned to teaching with renewed energy. The children thrived under her care, and Liam found himself looking forward to the evenings when they would sit together after the children were asleep, talking about their days and sharing stories of their pasts. Gradually, the town's initial gossip about their living arrangement faded, replaced by genuine respect for Victoria's dedication to both her students and the Valdez family. When Thanksgiving approached, several families invited them to share the holiday meal, a testament to their acceptance in the community. Victoria prepared the children for a Thanksgiving recitation at school, teaching them poems and songs to perform for their parents. Liam attended proudly, watching as even shy William stood tall and recited his lines clearly. Afterward, families gathered for a community feast in the town hall. "Miss Morris has worked wonders with those children," Mayor Johnson remarked to Liam as they watched Victoria helping the younger children with their plates. "Quite a change from the wild bunch they were becoming." "She's a natural mother," Liam agreed, his gaze following her movements with undisguised admiration. The mayor raised an eyebrow. "Natural enough to become their mother officially," Liam flushed slightly. "We've discussed it." "Good," the mayor nodded approvingly. "This town needs stable families. And speaking of stability, that school roof won't last another winter. Council's approved funds for repairs come spring." As winter descended on Willits, the Valdez Ranch became a warm haven against the snow and bitter cold. Victoria organized the children in decorating the house for Christmas, teaching them to make paper ornaments and stringing popcorn and cranberries for the small pine tree Liam and the boys brought in. On Christmas Eve, after a simple but festive dinner, the family gathered around the fireplace. Following Victoria's suggestion, each person shared something they were grateful for from the past year. "I'm thankful for my new boots," said Thomas practically, wiggling his feet for emphasis. "I'm grateful we had a good harvest," added James, showing his growing awareness of the family's needs. When it was Victoria's turn, she looked around the circle of expectant faces and felt her heart swell with emotion. "I'm thankful for finding a home here with all of you." Baby Rebecca, now nearly a year old and taking her first wobbly steps, chose that moment to toddle from Margaret's lap straight into Victoria's arms, as if confirming her place in the family. The spontaneous laughter and applause that followed warmed the room more than any fire could. Later, after midnight, when the children were asleep with dreams of Christmas morning brightening their slumber, Liam found Victoria still sitting by the dying embers of the fire. "You should rest," he said, settling beside her. "They'll be up at dawn, eager for their presents." Victoria smiled, her face glowing in the firelight. "I was just thinking about last Christmas. I spent it alone in my Boston apartment, surrounded by memories and grief." She turned to face him. "And now here I am, part of a family again." Liam reached into his pocket and withdrew a small wooden box. "I was going to give you this tomorrow with the others, but perhaps now is better." Curious, Victoria opened the box to find a simple silver ring with a small pearl nestled in the center. "It was my grandmother's," Liam explained. "Sarah wore it until her fingers swelled too much with her last pregnancy." He took a deep breath. "Victoria, these past months have shown me that life can begin again after loss. My children need a mother's love, and I—" He paused, gathering courage. "I find myself needing you in ways I never expected." Victoria's eyes shimmered with tears as she looked from the ring to his face. "I'm not asking for an immediate answer," Liam continued. "I know we agreed to wait until we were both ready, but I wanted you to have this as a promise. When you're ready, if you're ready, I would be honored to make you my wife." Victoria closed her fingers gently around the ring. "Liam," she said softly, "I came west because I had too much love to give and not enough mouths to feed it to." "You had too many children to feed and not enough hands to help," she smiled through her tears. "It seems Providence had a plan for both of us." She opened her hand, offering the ring back to him. For a moment, Liam's heart sank, thinking she was refusing, then she extended her left hand. "I don't need more time," she said simply. "I already know where I belong." With trembling fingers, Liam slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit as though made for her. When he looked up, Victoria's face was radiant with joy. Slowly, hesitantly, he leaned forward and kissed her their first kiss, tender and full of promise. The next morning, the children's excitement over their simple Christmas gifts was eclipsed by the news of the engagement. Margaret immediately began planning the details of the wedding, while James solemnly shook Liam's hand man to man. The younger children peppered Victoria with questions. Would they call her mother now? Would she stay forever? Could they have cake at the wedding? Victoria answered each question patiently, her heart overflowing with love for these children who had so completely claimed her heart. When Emma climbed into her lap and placed a small, sticky hand on either side of her face, asking earnestly, "Does this mean you're our real mother now?" Victoria found herself unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Liam answered for her. "It means Miss Victoria loves us all very much, and soon she'll be part of our family forever." Emma considered this, then nodded seriously. "Good. Because I already told Jesus that's what I wanted for Christmas." Pastor Matthews agreed to perform the ceremony in early April, after the worst of winter had passed, but before the spring planting demanded all of Liam's attention. The entire town embraced the news, with the women organizing a quilting bee to create a wedding gift, and the men volunteering to help Liam add a proper bedroom to the house for the newlyweds. As the wedding day approached, Victoria found herself increasingly reflective. One evening, as she sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains in gold and crimson, Liam joined her, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders against the lingering chill. "Second thoughts?" he asked, noticing her pensive expression. Victoria shook her head. "Not at all. Just thinking about journeys. A year ago, I was drowning in grief, unable to imagine any future worth living." She looked up at him, her eyes clear and certain. "Now I'm about to become a mother to 7 wonderful children and wife to a man I've grown to love deeply." Liam's heart swelled at her words. "You've brought life back to this home, Victoria, to all of us." The wedding day dawned clear and bright, with a fresh dusting of wildflowers carpeting the meadows around the ranch. The ceremony was held in the Willits Church, which was filled to capacity with townspeople, ranch hands, and Victoria's students. James stood proudly beside his father as best man, while Margaret served as Victoria's maid of honor, wearing her first grown-up dress sewn by the women of the town. The younger children, scrubbed clean and dressed in their Sunday best, watched with wide eyes as Victoria walked down the aisle in a simple cream-colored dress that set off her chestnut hair and glowing complexion. When Pastor Matthews pronounced them husband and wife, Liam kissed his bride with a tender reverence that brought tears to the eyes of even the most stoic ranchers present. The celebration afterward, held at the ranch under a canopy of spring leaves, lasted well into the evening, with music, dancing, and enough food to feed half the county. As twilight descended, Victoria found herself momentarily alone, watching the children playing with their friends under the watchful eyes of Mrs. Johnson and the other town matrons. Liam appeared at her side, offering a cup of punch. "Happy, Mrs. Valdez?" he asked, his voice warm with love. The name sent a thrill through her. "Very happy, Mr. Valdez." She leaned against him slightly. "Though I must admit I'm also a bit overwhelmed. 7 children, Liam, it's a tremendous responsibility." He nodded, his arm slipping around her waist. "It is, but we'll face it together." He hesitated, then added more softly, "And perhaps someday we might add to our family." Victoria looked up at him, surprised. "You would want more children?" "Only if you do," he assured her quickly. "I know we already have a full house, but—" He trailed off, suddenly uncertain. Victoria's face softened with understanding. "A child of our own would be a blessing," she said gently. "Though I already consider these 7 to be mine as well." Relief and joy mingled in Liam's expression. He leaned down to kiss her again, oblivious to the good-natured cheers from their guests. The first year of their marriage brought both challenges and joys. Victoria officially adopted the Valdez children, a formality that meant the world to both her and them. The transition from Miss Victoria to mother happened naturally over time, with each child making the change when it felt right to them. Emma and Thomas were the first, slipping easily into calling her mother within weeks of the wedding. The others followed gradually, with James being the last to make the change, though the respect and love in his eyes when he finally called her mother brought Victoria to tears. Life settled into a rhythm that suited them all. Victoria continued teaching at the school, bringing baby Rebecca with her each day. The older children divided their time between school, ranch chores, and the normal pursuits of growing boys and girls. Liam's cattle business slowly recovered, and by the following summer the ranch was prospering again. In late August, just as the first hints of autumn tinged the aspen leaves with gold, Victoria confirmed what she had begun to suspect. She was expecting a child. She shared the news with Liam one evening after the children were asleep, her voice trembling with a mixture of joy and apprehension. "Are you certain?" he asked, his expression a complex blend of emotions. Victoria nodded. "Dr. Thompson confirmed it yesterday. The baby should arrive in early spring." Liam pulled her into a gentle embrace, his hand cradling the back of her head. "Victoria," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you." She drew back slightly to look into his face. "You're truly happy about this, with 7 children already." "8 children," he corrected with a smile, "and yes, I'm happier than I can express." He placed his hand tentatively over her still flat stomach. A new life, a new beginning. When they shared the news with the children at breakfast the next morning, the reactions were varied but overwhelmingly positive. Margaret and Catherine immediately began discussing baby clothes and cradle arrangements. William wondered aloud if the baby would be a boy he could teach to ride. Emma simply climbed into Victoria's lap and pressed her ear against her stomach, listening intently for any sound of her new sibling. James, now 16 and increasingly aware of adult concerns, asked the practical questions. Would the baby's arrival change their living arrangements? Would Mother still be able to teach? His mature consideration touched both Liam and Victoria deeply. As Victoria's pregnancy progressed, the entire family rallied around her. Margaret took on more household responsibilities, while James assumed greater duties at the ranch. Even the younger children found ways to help, bringing Victoria tea or fetching her shawl without being asked. The winter of 1879-1880 was harsh, with blizzards that isolated the ranch for weeks at a time. Victoria was forced to close the school temporarily, focusing instead on teaching the Valdez children at home and preparing for the baby's arrival. During these snowbound days, the family grew even closer. Evenings were spent around the fireplace, with Victoria reading aloud from classic novels while the children listened, entranced by tales of far-off places and grand adventures. Liam would sit nearby, mending tack or carving wooden toys for the baby, his eyes often straying to his wife's face, marveling at the depth of his love for her. As her body changed with the growing child, Victoria found herself reflecting often on the journey that had brought her to this place. The grief that had once threatened to consume her had transformed into a quiet gratitude for the past and hope for the future. She still thought of Edward and Henry with love, but the memories no longer brought debilitating pain. One snowy evening, as she sat by the fire writing in her journal, Liam sat beside her and took her hand. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "About how life changes," she replied. "2 years ago, I couldn't imagine feeling joy again. Now I'm surrounded by love and expecting a child." She placed her free hand on her rounded belly, where the baby was kicking enthusiastically. "Sometimes happiness finds us when we least expect it," Liam nodded, understanding completely. "Sarah used to say that God never closes a door without opening a window." He squeezed Victoria's hand gently. "You were our window, Victoria." March brought the first signs of spring melting snow, returning birdsong, and the imminent arrival of the newest Valdez. Victoria's labor began on a clear, crisp morning with the scent of renewal in the air. Margaret rode to town to fetch Dr. Thompson, while Liam paced anxiously outside the bedroom door. After hours of labor, as the sun was setting, Victoria gave birth to a healthy son with a shock of dark hair and his father's strong features. When Liam was finally allowed into the room, he found his wife exhausted but radiant, cradling their newborn. "Meet your son," Victoria said softly, offering the bundled infant with trembling hands. Liam took the baby, overwhelmed by emotions he had thought himself too experienced to feel again the wonder of new life, the fierce protective love, the humbling responsibility. "He's perfect," he whispered, counting tiny fingers and toes. "What shall we name him?" Victoria had given this much thought. "I'd like to honor both our pasts while celebrating our future. What about Edward James Valdez?" "Edward for my first husband, who would be happy knowing I found love again, and James for your eldest son, who has been such a support to us both." Tears gathered in Liam's eyes as he nodded. "Edward James. It's a good name, a strong name." The other children were allowed in briefly to meet their new brother. Each approached the bed cautiously, peering with wonder at the tiny face peeking from the blankets. Emma declared him too small to play with yet, while Thomas promised to teach him to fish when he was bigger. Margaret touched his downy head with gentle fingers, already assuming the role of second mother that she had been preparing for. James, the namesake, stood back slightly until Victoria beckoned him closer. "Would you like to hold him?" she asked. The teenage boy looked startled, then nervous. "What if I drop him?" "You won't," Victoria assured him. "Sit here beside me." Carefully, she placed baby Edward in his brother's arms, adjusting his hold to support the infant's head. James stared down at the tiny face with an expression of awe. "Hello, Edward James," he said solemnly. "I'm your big brother. I'm going to teach you everything I know." The tender scene brought fresh tears to Victoria's eyes. This was what she had yearned for during those lonely days in Boston, not just a child of her own, but a family bound together by love rather than merely blood. As spring bloomed into summer, baby Edward thrived under the attention of his many siblings. Victoria gradually resumed her teaching duties, bringing the infant with her to school each day. The arrangement worked well, with the older students taking turns holding the baby during their breaks, learning responsibility while giving Victoria the freedom to teach. Liam expanded the ranch operations, adding sheep to their livestock after research suggested they would do well in the Colorado climate. The diversification proved profitable, allowing him to hire additional hands and ensuring the family's financial security. On warm evenings, the family would gather on the expanded porch Liam had built the previous autumn. Victoria would rock Edward while the older children played in the yard or helped with final chores. These peaceful moments, watching the sunset paint the distant mountains while surrounded by the family she loved, filled Victoria with a contentment she had once thought forever beyond her reach. Liam, noticing her emotional expression, came to sit beside her, taking her hand in his. "What is it?" "I was just thinking," she replied softly, "about how complete I feel, how blessed." He nodded, understanding perfectly. From too much love with nowhere to give it, to not enough hands to manage it all, to perfect balance, she finished, leaning against his shoulder. A heart full of love and plenty of places to pour it. As twilight deepened into night and stars appeared above the Colorado mountains, the Valdez family remained on their porch, a testament to love's ability to heal, transform, and create something beautiful from the broken pieces of the past. What had begun as a practical arrangement between two wounded souls had blossomed into a deep and abiding love that nourished not only them, but the 8 children who depended on them. Victoria's journey from grief-stricken widow to beloved wife and mother was complete, yet she knew it was also just beginning. There would be more challenges ahead, children growing up and moving away, the inevitable hardships of ranch life, perhaps even more babies to love and raise, but she would face them all with Liam by her side, and the knowledge that she had finally found where she belonged. In the wild expanse of the Colorado Territory, where life was often harsh and unforgiving, the Valdez Ranch stood as an oasis of love and family, proof that sometimes the greatest blessings arrive in unexpected packages, and that hearts, like gardens, can bloom again after the harshest winter. Years later, when visitors to Willits asked about the large, boisterous Valdez family with their prosperous ranch and endless supply of love, townspeople would smile and tell the story of the Eastern schoolteacher who came with too much love to give and the widowed rancher with too many mouths to feed, and how together they created something perfect.